this edition of Lakeville City Limits, we open the vault and take a look back at some of the history of Lakeville. Next, I talk with Bob Fink about a new community-wide initiative called Thrive by 5 Lakeville. And finally, Jody from Lakeville Liquors has information on eco-friendly wines in another edition of Cellar Notes. Hello, I'm City Administrator Steve Melke. Welcome to City Limits, Lakeville's public information program. Up first on today's show, we take a look back at one of the History Moments segments from years past.
There are more than 1,400 acres of public parks and open space in the city of Lakeville. Whether it's spending a hot day cooling off at Antlers, learning about the Korean War at Aronson, or enjoying one of the newest trails at East Lake, Lakeville has built a great park system for people to enjoy. The largest and arguably best park is one that many have never visited. In today's History Moment, we take a look back at the origins of Ritter Farm Park. The land at Ritter Farm Park was first farmed by the Tingley family, who purchased the land from the government in the 1800s. Throughout the years, various owners have made a living off this land, with the Christensen family operating Oak Hills Farm from 1942 to 1950. The farm had many buildings, including 2 houses, many barns, and a cistern that still stands today. In 1950, siblings David, Alma, and Rosetta Ritter and a man named Walter Hink purchased the farm for $18,000. They changed the name of the farm to Ritter's Guernsey Garden Farm. Now, one would think that the Ritters operated the farm. Actually, the Ritters never did. They bought the property as an investment. Others operated the farm and paid rent for use of the land and buildings. The Ritters continued to live there until the idea came to turn the farm into a city park. Longtime Lakeville resident Ed Mako describes where the idea came from.
I was elected to the village council, which was the 1 square mile where the present downtown Lakeville is situated. And Leo Aronson was the mayor at that time. And one day we were cruising around looking at some things. He said, I want to show you something. And we came in and we visited the Ritters. And then we walked around part of the farm at that time. And he said, I always thought this would be a nice park. And when he said it, it stuck in my brain. This place has got to be an area for the public. But it was out of our jurisdiction. There was nothing we in the village could do about it because it was in the township.
In 1967, Lakeville Township merged with the village of Lakeville, making it possible for Lakeville to acquire the land. And in 1971, it was time for the city to purchase the farm.
We requested federal and state funds. There were programs out that would help to buy land for open space. We applied for some of those, and both the feds and the state became interested in this land. In the meantime, however, there were a private developer or two who also became interested, and they were thinking of developing something like North Oaks, an enclosed community. And that really was getting support because you're talking about taxes. But I could see that this land would never be available, and we should still fight that. And then there was a split on the council. Not all of the council, it was never publicly fought over, but they're not, all the people there thought the park was a better idea. But anyway, when the feds were interested, they sent a representative here, and he and I walked throughout the whole park, and I pointed out different things to him, and he fell in love with the place. He really thought, man, we can't let this go. And I said, well, you know, how much can we expect? He said, well, the grants come up with 50% of what the money would be. I said, well, that still leaves a lot of money trying to vote a bond issue for it. He said, but your state is interested, and we will tell them that we're interested, and they will come up with 50% of the remaining. So all that leaves for Lakeville is a quarter of the price. Well, then the negotiations started with Ritter, real negotiations, and his sisters were still doing well, health-wise, and what they wanted was a piece of the park to stay there till they either went into nursing homes or they died. We had this money, we filled out the papers, we worked at it, and then it was time to put it up for a bond election. And at that time, I was running against an opponent for the mayorship. Now, the city council agreed to having an election, but the other council members would not support and come out and say, we support the park, we encourage you to vote for it. We had the election, and the bond issue went down on a few votes, and my opponent beat me by quite a bit more. Well, then, being the gentleman that he was, he came to me and he said, Ed, we'd like you to continue as the chair of the bond issue. And I agreed. I agreed because I believed it was something worthwhile. And we still had private money that was trying to buy this. So then when the legal time passed, when you could re-vote on a bond issue, we put it up again. This time the present mayor at that time and all of the council publicly supported, and it passed.
With the passing of the bond referendum in the spring of 1972, the city purchased the 314-acre farm for $400,000, and the surviving Ritters were able to stay on a portion of the property until they passed away, with Alma Ritter staying there until 1989. At that time, many of the old farm buildings were still standing, but in the early 1990s, most were torn down, except for the old silo, the cistern, and one of the farmhouses, which was remodeled into the Environmental Learning Center. In 2005, the city honored Ed Mako for his work by naming the Environmental Learning Center after him.
The one thing that I really off and on have been asked to support was to keep it a natural park. There are folks who wanted to put baseball diamonds and football fields and so forth, and each time that came up, Steve Michaud and myself would oppose it. For one thing, Lakeville has some of the best fields for that kind of activity all over the place. And so I'm very happy to go over there, and it is still a natural park.
Throughout the years, there have been many park improvements to include park shelters, hiking, horse and skiing trails, and even an archery range. Today, the park is 340 acres of rolling hills, groves of mature trees, and pristine lakeside waterways.
Yes, I saw it as You know, you look at your life and you think, have I done anything worthwhile? Have I put my energies into anything worthwhile? And I feel a personal amount of pride that I didn't let it slide by, that I kept at it. And granted, there were all sorts of other people who had pieces in there. And I certainly would, you know, one person doesn't do it alone. But I'm glad that I was in a position to keep it moving. Lakeville has done a fantastic job at preserving Ritter Park.
Looking for these? You drive buzzed. It could be one very expensive ride.
First, you gotta make bail. Then pay me to get your car back.
Your insurance premiums will go through the roof.
And my legal fees just keep adding up. All told, it could end up costing you $10,000.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Joining me today is Bob Fink with Thrive by 5 Lakeville. Bob, thanks for joining me on City Limits.
Glad to be here, Steve.
Thrive by 5 Lakeville is probably a term people in town haven't heard about before. What is Thrive by 5 Lakeville?
Well, Thrive by 5 has had its origins with a group of interested citizens from the community, including folks from the city, from the school district, from various churches, healthcare organizations, and those that are just interested in helping to make Lakeville continue to be a great place to live. We looked at a variety of different issues that are facing the city as it's grown over the years, and after a lot of deliberation, decided that we really wanted to look at how our children are doing before the age of 5 or before they start school, and what can we do to help them thrive.
So the initiative of Thrive by 5 is about school readiness?
It is about school readiness, and it's about looking at all the varieties of people and youth that we have coming into our schools and whether they're prepared for school, and what can we do to help bring the resources together that are available in the community, or maybe develop new resources to help them do well in school.
Bob, Lakeville is a community that has a lot of resources. Most of the people that live here have good jobs, and you know they have a good foundation for school readiness. Why did the group pick out school readiness as an issue?
Well, as we looked at some of the statistics from the school district, we found that with the change in our community and the broadness of diversity that we now have, that we have many students who are falling short of what their needs would be to enter school. And we took a good look at those statistics and also conferred with various people, especially within our education system, and found that we do have a number of students who will need and do need to have some enhancement for their early experiences so they're ready to thrive when they get to school.
Well, what's the impact on the community if we have kids that are showing up ready but to attend school but aren't really ready for school?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that, because as the convening group got together and we heard from people from all segments of the community, the police force, the housing folks, and the educators, and found that it is very important, because as these young people grow and develop into citizens in our community, their level of knowledge as they enter school definitely has a significant impact on their ability to achieve while they're in school, and therefore become better and more productive citizens.
So really it affects everybody if we have students who aren't able to keep up in school.
This really does. It affects our social services, the services that the city and that the schools provide, and the various things that our tax money support within the community.
Well, Bob, I understand that the group has planned to have an event or an activity to bring people together to talk about school readiness. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure, Steve. On the evening of November 14th, right here at City Hall at 6:30 in the evening, we're going to have what we're calling a call to action. And we're inviting a variety of people from the community that can come and get together to learn from each other as to what the resources are that are available and how, by working together, we may have an impact on these youngest citizens here in Lakeville. So we're hoping to have a nice turnout and to have people come to learn what's available, to maybe find out where we can develop some new resources that are needed within the community to support all of our citizens.
And who are you hoping to have at this event?
Well, we're inviting a variety of social service agencies, church-based agencies, and individual providers of things like daycare, so that we can find out from them what their needs are. But we're also of the opinion that many of these people don't know that the others exist, and they could find support just within the resources that are already here in Lakeville.
So you're really hoping that you're going to be able to make some connections in the community.
Definitely. We're hoping that that would be the case, because we've found, as we've spoken to various people, that there is sometimes a lack of awareness of really what our community has to offer and what is already here.
Is there any charge for coming to the event, or is it free to the public?
No, this is an event that's free to the public, and everybody's welcome to join in, and we're always looking for other agencies that we may not have contacted yet, or programs that people have within the community, and if they would like to participate, boy, we'd sure like to see them here.
So as an outcome of that event, what is this group hoping will happen?
Well, we're hoping to do a couple of things, I believe. One is to identify needs and continue to work with our community leaders from the city, from the education sources, from the churches, all those folks that we brought together to begin with, to maybe look at how we can support and develop new resources, but also to really make and use the resources that are available and have them work together to continue to progress.
Well, Bob, it sounds like it's a very interesting project and something that the community really needs. I want to thank you for joining me here on City Limits today.
Glad to be here, Steve. Thanks.
Did you know that leaves raked onto the street can clog storm drains, lead to hazardous driving, and potentially contribute to localized flooding? If these excess leaves wash into lakes, ponds, and streams, they will soak up the oxygen that fish need to survive. Homeowners should take responsibility for the maintenance of their property and properly dispose of the leaves in their yards. Leaves from yards that are raked or blown onto the street add significantly to the time and taxpayer expense of disposing of these leaves by the City Streets Division. Stay tuned. City Limits will be right back.
If stormwater pollution was rubber duckies, then it wouldn't matter what went down our storm drains. But it does, because stormwater pollution is not rubber duckies. It's trash. Oil, cigarette butts, and pet waste, flowing untreated to our lakes and rivers. And that's not good for any of us, because we all live downstream. So take a minute and help keep our waters clean, because clean water means quality of life. So keep it clean, Minnesota.
We'd like to remind residents about winter parking restrictions. There is no on-street parking allowed between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. from November 1st until April 1st. This ordinance was enacted to facilitate snow removal and to enhance public safety. Violators are subject to citations, towing, and impoundment of vehicles.
Hi, I'm Jody Nordstrom here with another edition of Cellar Notes. Joining me today is Christy Farrell with Bourget Imports. Christy, thank you for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in the wine industry?
Sure. I got started in the wine industry in 2001 and started working at a liquor store because I love wine and I wanted to learn more without having to sell mass-produced wines. So I started at a liquor store over in Long Lake, worked there for a couple years, networked, and started selling wine on the distribution side in 2003, and I've been there on that side ever since. I've been at a couple different companies until I found the right fit at Bourget Imports, and I have the pleasure of saying I've called on Lakeville ever since 2003.
Very nice. You carry a wide portfolio of products. Today we're going to focus a little bit more on your eco-friendly wines. People are becoming very concerned with organic farming, and so we were wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how that plays into wine.
Sure. So there has been a huge trend in the wine world to have sustainable farming practices, organic farming practices, and even biodynamic farming practices. And people believe that this is better for their health. They're not having as many synthetic chemicals in the wines.
Can you, touch a little bit on, tell us the difference between organic, sustainable, and biodynamic farming?
Sure. Let's start first of all with sustainable wines. To put it simply, sustainable made wines, they use as little synthetic chemicals as possible. And it's usually towards the very end, or if, let's say, there's a disaster in the vineyard that they cannot fix organically, they will then turn to maybe a synthetic chemical then. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing. People have been using synthetic chemicals in winemaking for years. But sustainable winemakers, they wait till the last minute to use them. Also, if you are a sustainable wine, you are able to add some sulfites at the end. Sulfites are not a bad thing, and I want the general public to know this. Sulfites can act as a preservative in the wine. That's why a winemaker may choose to add them at the very end before bottling. It helps preserve the wine and give it longevity. Then organic wines, organics are basically not using any synthetic chemicals. Much more in tune with the land. You're using a lot more manure, compost, eco-friendly practices, and not adding sulfites in the wine at the end of winemaking. Now, biodynamic farming it's a little bit more lengthy of a topic. Basically, biodynamics was started by a man named Rudolf Steiner in the early 20th century, who wanted to kind of get a more holistic farming practices. And this is for all farming. This is not just wine. This is even growing green beans can be biodynamic. Biodynamics is much more than prohibiting synthetic chemicals. It's becoming in tune with the land, finding the natural energies of the land, and really finding a balance and harmony between the land, plants, and environment. There are guiding principles of biodynamic farming. One is to increase the soil, upgrade the soil's natural components through plant, animal, and mineral matter. So you're talking a lot of manure. A lot of composting goes on with biodynamics, as it does with organics. And also really working the land, tilling the land, hoeing the land, getting into the nitty-gritty of the land, and making sure that the soil's nutrients are maintained or upgraded to help nourish the plants and animals within the environment. The third big component is using these principles in a structured program that follows an annual cycle of plant life and lunar cycles. So biodynamic farmers will actually harvest the land according to a lunar cycle. They will also till the land according to a lunar cycle. And they also very much follow the natural energies of plant life. Also, in biodynamics, if a winemaker decides to refine the wine. So sometimes before a wine is bottled, a winemaker will filter the wine or refine the wine. In order to do that, a lot of times winemakers use an egg white. That egg white has to come from a chicken that laid the egg on the property. This is all within the environment. So the vineyards have to have livestock. That is part of biodynamic farming. Now, where biodynamic has become controversial is that there's a little, what some people call hocus pocus or voodoo to it. Again, following the moon cycle. Some people think that's just crazy talk. Why do we need to follow the moon to harvest our land or to add compost or whatnot? And also there is a part where you have to take animal horns and bury them in the ground at a certain point, and this is supposed to help the natural energies of the soil and the plants. That's where some people think this gets to be a little voodoo-like.
That's very interesting.
Biodynamics is very complex.
I see. Now, not all companies will put, sustainable, organic, or biodynamic on the label of their wine, and why wouldn't they want to advertise that?
A huge concern is cost. A lot of the biodynamic organic farmers out there and sustainable farmers, they're farmers. They're not mass-produced wineries. There's some more commercialized wineries that do practice sustainable farming, and I applaud them for that. But for the most part, we're talking about family farmers. Farmers don't make a whole lot of money, and they don't really want to put their resources into having a certification on their label. Also, with that being said, though, a wine may say it's sustainably grown or has sustainably grown grapes, and they are actually organic. They don't put that on the label because it's not certified. The certification process, especially in the U.S., is a little bit more costly and lengthy because you have to go through the United States Department of Agriculture. You also have to go through the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearm Bureau because they're the ones that control the wine labeling.
Well, Lakeville Liquors carries many eco-friendly wines. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the wines that we carry that come from your portfolio?
Sure, I'd love to. So we'll start here with the Pratsch-Gruner Veltliner. It says made with organic grapes. So this wine is sustainably grown, made with organic grapes, but they might want to keep the ability to add sulfites at the end as a natural preservative. Or they might want to be able to at least use a synthetic chemical if there is a disaster in the vineyard. They want to keep that option open. But it is made with organically grown grapes, as the label states. Now, and same with the XM Bordeaux. This is sustainably grown. It has not been certified organically, but it is an organic, sustainably grown wine. They just chose not to do the certification process. And also, I should quickly interject, the certification process is different in every country. France and Italy do not follow our agricultural laws or our alcohol, tobacco, and firearm laws because they actually view wine as grape growing, as an agricultural product. So they don't have as many agencies regulating it. Their wine is still regulated just in a different fashion than ours. Okay. So some wineries don't want to get certified in 5 different countries. That's going to be a huge added cost to the winery. Now, the other 2 wines that I have out here, these are 2 wines that are in their biodynamic conversion or have biodynamic farming practices. Domaine Rindebois is organic. In order to be biodynamic certified, you do have to have at least 3 years of organic certification, and then it takes about 1 year to 3 years to actually get your biodynamic certification. So they are in that conversion right now where they are working towards being certified organic for 3 years, and then they can go on to being biodynamic. So, and this is a fantastic little Sauvignon Blanc. It's actually one of my favorite Sauvignon Blancs, but it's biodynamic, and it's under $15. Organic wine, biodynamic wine does not need to be astronomically priced. Then this little Pinot Noir from Burgundy. This comes from a very small village in Burgundy called Marcenay. It's 100% Pinot Noir. They do not produce a whole lot of wine. I mean, I'm just talking like a couple thousand cases a year. And biodynamic, and it's just because that's the way he farms.
We touched a little bit on sulfites earlier. A lot of people do think that they are bad or that red wines have more sulfites. Can you just
I would love to touch on that. So sulfites, as I said before, it's not bad. Sulfur dioxide is a natural compound. I mean, if you remember learning your little chemistry table in, junior high, sulfur dioxide's on that. It is not a bad thing. It is a natural occurring compound, and it naturally occurs in wine. Like I said before, some wineries choose not to add sulfites as a preservative, and that's just fine. In that instance, a lot of winemakers might use the natural acidity in wine to help act as a preservative. Where there's a huge misconception, I don't even know where it started, but someone years ago said, oh, sulfites are bad and they give me a headache and I'm allergic. If you're allergic to sulfites, it is a huge issue. You can't even eat asparagus. You can't drink orange juice. There is more sulfites in orange juice than in wine, and people don't seem to realize that. And so some people may have a sensitivity to that, and also histamines. It's really not sulfites. If someone says that it's sulfites, it gives me a huge headache, could be the histamines, or maybe you drank too much of that wine and that's what caused your headache.
That very well could be. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining us on another edition of Cellar Notes.
Now it's time for the answer to today's trivia question, which is, approximately how many cul-de-sacs are located in the city? If you guessed D, 500, you would be correct. In addition to the cul-de-sacs, the Streets Division is responsible for maintenance, repair, snow removal, and ice control of nearly 260 centerline miles of roadway in the city. Here's a look at some of the upcoming public meetings that you can attend at City Hall. The Parks, Recreation, and Natural Resources Committee will be meeting on Wednesday, November 6th at 6 p.m. The Planning Commission will hold its meeting on Thursday, November 7th at 6 p.m. The Finance Committee, which meets at the Water Treatment Facility, meets on Thursday, November 14th at 7 p.m. And the City Council will be meeting on Monday, November 18th at 7 p.m. For more information on government meetings and the role of our boards and commissions, visit the city website at www.lakevillemn.gov. That's it for this edition of Lakeville City Limits. Thanks for watching. If you experience a problem with your cable TV service here in Lakeville, you should first contact Charter Communications at 1-800-581-0081. If you do not receive a satisfactory response, you can call the city at 985-4407 and we will assist you in resolving your problem. And just a reminder, you can see all our programming online on the city website at www.lakevillemn.gov. Thanks again for watching this program and all of the programming here on LG TV.
Our youngest citizens need you. Thrive by 5 Lakeville is a community initiative that enhances school readiness for our newest learners. Join us on Thursday, November 14th at Lakeville City Hall to learn more about why local leaders have identified school readiness as a high priority community issue. Find out ways you can help and connect directly with others that provide support for local school readiness efforts. Join us on November 14th and support Thrive by 5 Lakeville.